What's up, everyone? Welcome to week 3 of the NFL season and the weekly preview edition of the Football Goons podcast. We've settled down some from our overreactions of week 1 and stabilized just a bit after week 2. We have a full slate of games to discuss this week, including some early AM action on Sunday morning for the first time this season with the 9:30 a.m. London game. But first, let's check in with the crew and see how things are going this week. Guys, how are we feeling after 2 weeks of NFL football and fantasy football?
Pretty great. It's not everything's gone my way. And fantasy, I've got several 1-and-1s. My NFL team's 1-and-1. But I think about that kind of statement. And I just say, how do we make it? It's so much fun when it is football season. How do we make it when it's not? It's hard to think about enjoying your time as much when there's no games, no fantasy, no bad breaks or lucky breaks, of which I had both this weekend. So it's just nice to have it back, I guess. Now that I don't want to lose track of how great it is to get it back just because we're in the swing of it.
Yeah, it's frustrating too because I'm so pessimistic at times about things, and you guys know this. I'm already looking at
everything.
it.
Shocker.
I'm already looking at it, and I'm like, oh man, this is almost a quarter of the way done. And I just have to
No, it's not.
That's bad math.
Well, I'm just saying, we're
second period, South. Second period. Come on down. We'll talk about fractions and how they work.
I understand how they work. I'm saying we're almost at the quarter waypoint already, and it just feels depressing.
You know what? South is the eternal pessimist, where he's looking at it wow, we're already a quarter of the way through. He's already counting the next 2 weeks as a loss.
No, listen, hey, I'm not counting anything as a loss. I'm just enjoying football season. I'm trying to figure out whether or not it's going to put me in the bad graces with the big guy if I stream this game during church on Sunday morning. So, I'm just wrestling that thought right now. But all right, anyway, let's get right into things here. Let's talk about what I've labeled next man up. Week 1 saw its fair share of injuries, and week 2 didn't slow down that trend at all. Greg Olsen, Rob Gronkowski, Jimmy Graham, Jordy Nelson, Corey Coleman, Corey Davis, Sam Bradford, Rob Kelly are just among some of the popular names who left week 2 with an uncertain status or an injury. I only bring up these guys because these are guys that you're going to be mostly rostered or thinking about rostered. So let's look at a handful of guys who could step up and fill in on your roster in a pinch. First name on the list, gotta love this, Javorius Buck Allen. Buck Allen, he's the highest output right now on the Ravens offense for 2 straight weeks, second most targets on the team, most rushes. He had a touchdown last week. Looks like Terrence West may not play this week. Is he worth a filler flex play look at this point? Because I guess you could say he's going buck wild.
First of all, stop that now. Second of all, we joke around about this all the time, and I think you can look at Buck as a flex player at this point, because we always talk about, Miles made the joke about Robbie Anderson a couple weeks ago, especially when you're doing daily stuff. You go down the list and you find a number 1 wide receiver at 5,000. We're getting to the point where there's no other running backs left. West is down, Woodhead is out. So if you're talking about Buck Allen as the Ravens' number 1 back with really no other options, isn't that what we're looking for on a consistent week? Volume. So if there's no timeshare because there's no one else to share time with, that's absolutely a good flex option for you. Now, we've said all along, it's only week 3. Do not overreact. If you're 2-0, don't start dropping players for Buck Allen, but absolutely look at it as a chance to improve your team if needed.
Yeah, I'm all in on Buck Allen. Honestly, there's a couple leagues where, he's already picked up because we just have an open waiver system, but especially in a PPR, he's just going to get so many touches of the football from week to week that, especially if he's the first guy off your bench, if he's a flex in a PPR league or a half PPR league, you're going to be able to count on him just based on the volume that he gets. And the Ravens play an ugly brand of football, but for whatever reason, these dual threat type I use that term loosely because Danny Woodhead's not a dual threat, but these multi-dimensional running backs just seem to cash in on all kinds of garbage fantasy points. So sign me up. I mean, it doesn't matter how you get them. If you're scoring the points, I'll take them.
Yeah, I agree with Buck Allen. He's looking good right now. He's certainly worth stashing, especially if he's not costing you anything. So there are worse options out there.
All right. Hey, let's move on to the next player on our list here. Wide receiver J.J. Nelson of the Cardinals. Had to fill in for John Brown last week with an injury. 5 catches for 120 yards and a touchdown in week 2. Is this more of a product of the fact that they were playing a banged up Colts secondary? Or can we kind of expect him to step up and see, hey, this is my opportunity here to kind of jump in and put my stamp on things here?
We've seen weeks like this from everybody in that Cardinals wide receiving offense over the last couple of years. But I think it still comes down to I don't think any of us really trust Carson Palmer at this point. So, yes, 5 for 120 and a touchdown that is great this week, but I wouldn't be surprised if Carson Palmer doesn't let that happen another time for the rest of the season. Like, and you can't tell me that you can't agree with that, because Carson Palmer has been very mediocre for the last 2 years. So, although I think JJ has the potential to give you weeks like that again against bad defenses, because that's what he was playing last week, but I wouldn't count on that every week from him.
Yeah, for me, the Cards are a disaster right now. But for me, I think that J.J. Nelson's worth a flyer. He's essentially the exact same guy as John Brown, except healthy and a little bit faster than John Brown. So what you thought John Brown could possibly be, J.J. Nelson already is that. So he's worth a shot, at least the stash for me.
Yeah, I think he's worth a flyer this week, especially. They're going to play the Cowboys. Cowboys have not really looked good in the passing defense department to this point. Trevor Siemian lit them up. I mean, Eli really couldn't take advantage of them in week 1 and put the ball in the end zone or anything, but I think that's more of a product of who the Giants are than anything. So I think this is a really good, sneaky, great matchup for him this week, where he could really blow the top off of the defense and hit you with a big home run type play this week. But other than that, it's going to be kind of like that Deshaun Jackson element where you don't know when is he going to have that big week, when is he not. So, and I do think that, interestingly enough, Bruce Arians calling out Carson Palmer at halftime during the broadcast when asked why he felt the offense was struggling, all he said was quarterback. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out going forward. It looked like Palmer was a little better in the second half this past week, but I'm definitely interested in Nelson as well. All right, let's talk about Darren Sproles, running back of the Eagles. Could have been a product of the way the game played out this past week, that he had so many opportunities and so many snaps, but it just feels like this matchup this week against a kind of a stingier Giants defense, even though the Eagles have really had their way with them, feels like he might be the player who kind of steps up again. Is this too inconsistent of a situation, or are you kind of buying in a little bit on Darren Sproles?
Yeah, it's definitely too inconsistent for me. I mean, as far as putting him in your lineup this week, it's too inconsistent. Like you said, the Giants are really tough up front, and Doug Peterson has, let's just say, shown an affinity for the passing game. He he gets away from the run too quickly. And I'm not Mr. Got to run the ball, got to run the ball. You really don't. I mean, I think you can have an excellent team airing it out like crazy, but Sproles was really effective running the ball on Sunday. And then for whatever reason, Doug was like, nah, his 6 yards of carry, I'm good. I don't want it anymore. Yeah. He just kind of quit on it. Right. I'm not going to complain about quitting on the run game as far as Blunt, who looks like he doesn't even want to be there at all. But Sproles, he was running hard. So I like him going forward. Just kind of stash on your bench and wait for a nice matchup. I wouldn't play him this week against the Giants, though.
I'm really glad that I didn't draft LeGarrette Blunt on every freaking team. Really glad I didn't do that.
It sounds like you did.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I agree. This is just too much of an inconsistent situation right now. I'm definitely got him on my watch list. I want to pay attention to it because if they're going to keep throwing the ball the way they are, he's going to be involved in that element. So he's definitely worth a look going forward. But this is a tough matchup this week. All right, tons of issues at the tight end position, and I bring up this name because Gronk got banged up a little bit this past weekend. There's some uncertainty whether or not he's going to be full speed ahead. Dwayne Allen, now with the Patriots, he's the next man up if Gronk is limited. Do you see a similar target distribution for Dwayne Allen, or is this going to be a situation where it's too hard to tell?
For me, the Patriots in general are just too hard to tell. I mean, like, we joke around about it all the time, but like, they just have so many, I don't even want to say weapons because some of them are not like the world's best athletes, but they just have so many guys that they use on a consistent basis and rotate in there. I mean, Rex Burkhead was their top running back this weekend. And after the week one, we were like, oh, Mike Gillislee is going to be the LeGarrette Blount of that offense. Well, that's done. Chris Hogan had 1 catch week 1, like 4 week 2. Like, you just never know like what's going to happen with that offense. So I'm not ready to go reach for a backup tight end, hoping that he can give me Gronk projections. Like, that's kind of risky.
Yeah, and I'll just throw this out here because I pull these names based on the percentage of people who are adding them over a variety of different formats, and I think people kind of got scared initially on the news with Gronk, and they just kind of thought, like, next man up, I better pull in Dwayne Allen. But Dwayne Allen is not Gronk. You know what I mean? Like, nobody is Gronk. So I think that if you're pulling him in expecting the same target share, you're going to be pretty sad come this weekend. If you pull him in and you get lucky and he catches a touchdown in the red zone, I also wouldn't be shocked. It's just one of those things that, random guys score at random times with the Patriots. So there's no rhyme or reason. It's definitely a flyer, but do not expect the same kind of target share.
I'm going to pick on both of you because you're both wrong. But I mean, I don't want Dwayne Allen, so I'm just going to skate right past that. But it's time to let go of this Patriots who knows who's showing up thing. Like, Rocco, you just said about Mike Gillislee had 18 carries on Sunday for 69 yards. Like, he's averaging 57 yards and 2 touchdowns per game. Like, all right, yeah, so averages can be swayed because it's only 2 weeks, but you give me a back that's got 18 carries and a touchdown? I mean, like, I'm super interested in that. Like, don't give me Rex Burkhead because he was the one that ran the fade that Brady threw perfectly. Like, Burkhead's irrelevant. I want Gillislee as much as I did in the preseason. And more than anything, if Gronk is limited or out at all, don't sleep on James White in PPR. Dude had 8 catches on Sunday. I want White and Gillislee in every single league, all of them. I don't know what to trust out of Hogan. I'm not entirely sure. Out of Cooks even, I thought they were going to feature him. He actually cost me a lot of money in FanDuel. So, Brandon, if you're listening, I'll take that check anytime you got it. For not showing up at your own home. But, like, I don't know. I think the Patriots of old, where it's like, oh, Troy Brown or whomever, that's kind of gone. I love Gillislee. I love White. And I love Gronk if he's back. Outside of that, I think you're kind of wasting your time.
All right, another situation where kind of a heavily added guy, and I'm going to get into him a little bit more later, but Devin Funchess, wide receiver with the Panthers. The Panthers offense has really struggled, but it seem like somebody has to kind of pick up some of the targets that Olsen is going to leave off the field. And I think the overwhelming majority think that Kelvin Benjamin is obviously the guy there, but you need another option. So do you feel like people are going to be thinking Devin Funchess is the guy? I mean, is this a legitimate option here? I mean, they've featured him in the red zone at times before, so is he worth a look?
For me, he's a good athlete, and he can make some decent plays. And I guess he's going to get some more targets that Olsen's out, but I'm not sure he turns him into much. I think that 4 for 68 line he put up is pretty near his ceiling. So he could put in some more production, but I don't see any way it's more consistent. And realistically, I don't think anybody wants to start Devin Funchess right now immediately. So for me, I'd rather stash Curtis Samuel if we're looking in that direction because of the upside, because I think Devin Funchess is pretty much at his peak right now.
See, the only thing I disagree with is I think that because of his size, he's a monster to probably pick up some of that production in the red zone that Greg Olsen always gets from Cam. So, I mean, he's not going to throw fades to 5'10" Curtis Samuel. It's just not going to happen.
They're never down the field so far yet, so you don't have to worry about fades.
That's a fair assessment.
Red zone's irrelevant here.
No, I'm not buying on Funchess. I'm just saying, like, when you get down there, if they get down there, it's not going to be Samuel. It's not going to be McCaffrey. I think they may start looking Christian McCaffrey's way a little bit more too now in the passing game, trying to open things up. They brought him along slowly, and they didn't want to rush him back in. But if they want to stay competitive without their number one option in Greg Olsen in the receiving game, they're going to have to find other ways to be creative and get the ball into their playmakers' hands.
We got one more name here on the list of the waiver guys this week, and that's Samaje Perine. Rob Kelly went down. Perine kind of stepped in as the lead feature back in a sense, but it seems like Chris Thompson cut in too much and took all of the actual touchdown action. So is Perine a guy who you might be looking at going forward, or are you hesitant based on the production and touchdown vulture in Chris Thompson?
The only thing I'll say about the Perine and really the Skins backfield situation is if you've got a feeling that Perine is going to be something special going forward, just grab him now because, hey, listen, Rob Kelly's all right, I guess, but Perine's definitely a better back than he is. So if the Skins are going to look for a bell cow any weeks and you've got something on the schedule that looks like a soft run thing, it's going to be Perine. And you don't want to wait till week 8 or 9 when everybody's alerted to it to try to claim him because you'll lose out on him. I don't think he's going to be a heavy claim this week because you do have guys like Buck Allen that, pretty much every league is he's going to be the number one waiver claim or 1 or 2. And you if you're that, 7th or 8th waiver claim guy, Perine's a guy you're going to be able to get with that. So if you're going to have foresight and you're going to project that he's going to take over that backfield, just grab him now when you're definitely able to. I'm not sure I'm buying into it. I love Chris Thompson. I think he's really good, especially in a PPR. I mean, Perine might not catch a pass all year, but if you're in a standard league and you want to have that foresight that maybe Perine is this year's Jordan Howard type player, grab him right now, stash him for a couple of weeks, and then when everybody's like, "Oh, I better claim him," he's already on your roster, so you'll be good to go.
Right.
Yeah, worth mentioning too that the Redskins did extend Chris Thompson, so they love him as well. So he's going to be involved.
They should.
Yep. All right, hey, let's jump over to YouTube and take a question real quick here. Zach is checking in. He wants to know, how do you guys feel about Fitzgerald, Baldwin, and Tate? Need one to be a good wide receiver too. Also have Julio. Should I try to trade to get a better wide receiver?
Can we first talk about how amazing this question is? Because coming into the fantasy season, if you told me that you had Julio and Doug Baldwin and Fitz and Tate were going to be your 3-4, and you were going to have to decide which one of them to start each week, I would have thought you were golden. But the Seahawks have started out so slow that this is a legitimate question now. I'm never ready to give up on Larry Fitzgerald. So I do. But in this case, I'd probably wind up going Tate just because at this point, and this is kind of crazy to say also, but at this point, I trust Matthew Stafford more than I trust the other two. Listen, we're 2 weeks in. When do you ask the question yourself? When do we start saying that this is more than, just a fluke?
I'm going to jump ahead, so I won't answer when you ask about the Russ Wilson or Cam Newton thing later, South. But Wilson's career, he's got 30 top 6 fantasy performances out of the quarterback position. None of them in 6 years have been week 1 or week 2. He and Seattle always start slow, always. And that's just week 1 or 2. Even 3 and 4, they're a slow starting team. You want Doug Baldwin. Now, if you can trade for a better 2 and not have to give up a lot, then great. I mean, go ahead and do it. But you need to be thrown to death with Julio and Doug Baldwin.
Yep.
I mean, Zach, don't overreact. I just see that you just posted 2. It's a standard league, which I think strengthens my argument for Baldwin over Tate and Fitz. And maybe I'm just cranky at Fitz because I finally Hey, shout out. You can split the check with Brandon Cooks because I FanDueled Larry Fitzgerald this week too. So you two idiots both owe me some money. So I'm a little mad. But I love Baldwin. Don't change a thing. Don't overreact. It's been 2 weeks. Seattle's never good after 2 weeks. Go with Doug.
Yeah, I would just echo the same thing. Just kind of steer the ship, while the waters are rough right now, because Baldwin is, he's a guy that a lot of people were, and I still feel strongly about. He's a top 12 to 15 play at the wide receiver position. So in essence, at the end of the year, most likely you're going to have 2 potential top 10 candidates out of those 2 guys. Now, this is kind of like a bizarro world where Rocco's all in on Tate and I'm not so much after where we were last year. But I just feel like the Lions situation is very fluid. So you never know which week, which guy's going to eat. Stafford spreads the ball around a lot, and we know that Baldwin has been very consistent in Seattle. So I would just say hold on for dear life for these first couple weeks, because I think it's going to even out and things are going to kind of go from bizarro world back to the norm. All right, hey, let's go into a quick no huddle approach with a couple questions here. We're going to have some rapid responses to several of the bigger storylines around the league and moving forward. So first question here. 0-2 teams historically do not have a great chance at the playoffs, somewhere around 12%. Which 0-2 team is most likely to still make the playoffs if I made you pick one right now?
I think what's craziest about this, and it speaks to that stat, obviously the stat's kind of swayed with 0-2 is probably not a good team. But, the Chargers are a good team.
Yeah.
They just are. And they're 0-2, and they're absolutely not going to be in that 12% because not only are they 2 games behind the division leader, they're 2 games behind all 3 of the other teams in their division because Denver, Oakland, Kansas City, all undefeated. So I threw them out. As much as I hate to say it, I'd go Giants. They do still have an elite defense. The offense is a nightmare right now, but you have one of the 2 or 3 best playmakers in the league on that offense in Odell. So when he gets healthy, he's scary. And Eli, as much as he's terrible, he has led 2 worse teams than this to Super Bowl championships. So, nobody in the division's 2-0. I think the Giants have the best shot, but my money on the line, none of these 0-2 teams are going anywhere.
Crazy that I said the exact same thing. The Chargers, based on what they have, but 4 teams can't make the playoffs from that division, and the other 3, even though the Chargers are good, are head and shoulders above them. And the rest of the division for the Giants are 1-1. They have OBJ coming back, I guess, healthy, and they went 11-5 last year with essentially the same team. It looks ugly right now, but I think Odell's going to turn it around in a big way.
I think the Giants can't score any points on offense. By the way, Miles, thank you. You said it. The Jets got 20 before the Giants did. That's fantastic. I mean, yeah, we lost 45-20, but we got 20 before the Giants. No, listen. I'm actually going to go in the reverse of this. I think it's got to be the Chargers because the AFC as a whole doesn't have 7 great teams. So for the Chargers to get up to 6, it'll be hard in that division. But I don't think the Giants can score enough points this year to get to the 6th best team in the NFC. I just don't. So I mean, just based on conferences and everything. Again, I don't think any 0-2 team is going to be able to make the playoffs. Gun to my head. But You're making me pick one. I'll take the Chargers and hope that they can slide into a 6th seed, possibly.
Yeah, the shame of it, I know this was supposed to be quick, but the shame of it is the Chargers, all due respect, would probably win the AFC South going away, and they're going to get last in their own division. It's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'll split the decision here. I'm going to go the Chargers just because I think that you're getting 1 playoff team out of the North, 1 playoff team out of the South. So, the door is definitely open for 3 AFC West playoff teams. I think the Broncos will level out a little bit. Just because they're not going to get that same consistent quarterback play. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but I just doubt it. So I'm going with the Chargers on that one. Next one, which quarterback who has started slow will be a more consistent fantasy quarterback moving forward? Russell Wilson or Cam Newton?
Wilson by a lot.
that it? That's your explanation? It's just by a lot.
Yeah, it hurts Cam. Cam's not playing well, but it also hurts him that Olsen's gone now, and their offense just looks like a disaster. When Jonathan Stewart's like the feature best part of your offense by far, it's not a real good situation there in Carolina. Plus, they play in a tough division where they have to score a load of points, and they're not doing it. So, and Russell Wilson always starts slow, so he's going to turn it around.
Right. I think consistent is the key word here. I'm not worried about either one of them from a consistency standpoint. I would rather have Russ, and I kind of talked about why. I think Cam's not going to return to 2015 ever. That part of him is dead when they lost that Super Bowl, I think. But I think he's going to be consistent. He's going to return adequately what you drafted him at. I mean, nobody took him QB1 this year. He was drafted at 11 or 12, and I think that's what he can give you. So consistency, I think they're both going to get it because Cam will bounce back, but the Russ Wilson owner is going to be happier than the Cam Newton owner with said consistency.
I would just say ditto to basically what you guys said at this point because it's a more consistent situation for Russell Wilson. So, all right, real quick here, most are more frustrating to own, Amari Cooper or Demaryius Thomas?
It's got to be Amari Cooper. It's got to be. I mean, I know you can't look at this, but just real life draft pedigree has got to be DT is a first round pick also, but Amari was a top 10 pick. He has all the talent in the world, and he just gets ignored in the red zone. That's really what it boils down to. Gets a ton of targets, 20 to 20, and then just gets ignored in the red zone. I mean, the Broncos are not really built to throw the ball all over the place. But, DT does best with what he's given, But Amari, they are throwing it all over the place. It's just not to him once they get down there. Now, maybe it's because they just like all the other red zone targets, but how frustrating is that every year we're like Amari Cooper, top 10 wide receiver, just outside because his quarterback hates him.
Yeah, I think that it's Amari Cooper, but it's actually a lot closer than we want to give credit for. I don't understand. It feels like I get that Emmanuel Sanders is good, but Demaryius Thomas is so good. It feels like he should be, without question, a top 5 wide receiver in the league every year, but he's never going to get it because he's just getting vultured all the time by Emmanuel Sanders. So, but it is frustrating because with Amari Cooper, you don't just have Crabtree. You have Rod Streeter, who's always going to be getting touchdowns. And, just the most random things happen to make sure that he was never getting touchdowns. So it's very frustrating. All right, let's touch on one more here before we go back to some questions from our listeners here. What is one prediction you would take back after 2 weeks if you had the opportunity? And we're not talking I picked this player to win an award and now he's injured. That's just kind of fluky based on what you've seen on the field.
Are you talking fantasy or real life prediction?
Either one.
Yeah, for me, it was my belief that Denver was a middle of the road at best team. And you just commented that you think they'll slide back to average, and that's possible, I guess. But based on what we've just seen in the last 2 weeks, it's not happening. They look absolutely awesome on defense, which was expected. But the offense is actually playing really well right now, too. I mean, yeah, Trevor Siemian just lit up Big D for 4 touchdowns. America's team forgot their defense somewhere. But they've offensive, 4 touchdowns you can't expect, but CJ Anderson, you can expect to run like that. Every time he's been healthy, this is how he runs. And if they have a running game you have to expect in that fashion, then Simeon's going to have more time to find, 2 great receivers in Sanders and Demaryius Thomas. So I think Denver is an elite team if the running game sticks with it.
Besides the obvious of I picked New England to go undefeated this year, and that got messed up after week 1. No, I'm going to talk about the Lions here in the same fashion. I was kind of down on them because I constantly think that their lack of a running game is going to hinder them at some point. But that defense is getting stronger. I'll tell you what, watching Jared Davis last night in the middle of that defense as a rookie, he really impressed me, stood out big to me. I think the defense is getting better. They're solid up front in the front seven, and Matthew Stafford is Matthew Stafford. If they're close in the fourth quarter, I'm betting on them. So I was kind of out on them to make the playoffs again this year, but I think they're going to be right in the hunt again.
Yeah, mine is the Texans. I had them as a wild card team. And I mean, nobody was more down on the Texans as an offense than I was. I just felt like playing in that division and having the defense that they did and the way that things were unfolding, I felt like it was a lock that they were like a 6 seed. But I should have just listened to my gut and my instincts. My gut is big enough. I should have just listened to it. Their offensive line is atrocious. It might be worse than the Giants, which is saying something. And I don't see how they're going to pull together. It's a bad situation now where Deshaun Watson has to just basically scramble for his life. I know they won an ugly game the other night, but it's going to hurt big time coming up down the stretch here. So I would take the Texans back.
Stupid Bengals for me, man. I went to bat for them, and they suck so bad.
Why did you go to bat for them?
I tried to make you be right.
They suck so bad.
Yes, obviously.
Like listen, we've talked about Jeff Fisher in length, and right now, Jeff Fisher looks like a Hall of Famer in comparison to Marv Lewis. Like he's the worst coach in NFL history, ever in the history of it. He is. He's the worst.
It is amazing to have your job for like 14 years without winning a playoff game.
Oh
That's
my
nuts.
gosh.
All right. Well, listen, those are some we take back. Let's just touch on one more question here. Try to get a quick response. I like this one. It came in on YouTube. We're not just making these up either. We have a second Zach Zenner, who wants to know.
I bet it's the real Zach Zenner.
That's Zach Zenner, man. I can't believe it.
If you're the running back of the Lions, let us know. And if you're not, don't let me down. All right. Who wants to know, are you bought in on Wentz for the whole season, if healthy, because he has Andrew Luck? Now, I bring this up because a lot of people took that chance on Andrew Luck. So people are looking for options now, scrambling a little bit. Are you guys bought in on Carson Wentz?
I am. You want to know why? Because volume is king. And Doug Peterson is throwing the ball 75 times a game. And like ridiculous rates. Like, what was the stat you shared with us the other day? I think it was Miles that Carson South. He's like 2 passes away from being like the all-time leader after 20 games, and he's only played 19.
Yeah, if he throws 28 passes this week, he'll be the all-time leader through 20 games, and he's only played 19.
Like ridiculous. Like, yeah, so I'm bought in. Like, honestly, the interceptions are something that you want to watch for. But he's had times where he's a little unsafe with the ball. He's got it seems to be a little bit of a gunslinger mentality. Like, he avoids pressure and throws it up and hopes that his guys can go get it. But I think that's going to pay off for him more than it's not going to pay off for him. So, yeah, I'm actually going to buy in on Carson Wentz. I still think I think he has the chance to wind up as a QB1 at the end of the year, in a 10 or 12 team league. He's not going to be top 5, for the whole season, but yeah, I'm in on Wentz.
Yeah, I think pretty much everybody's going to agree here. You're going to get a ton of volume. The offense is a lot better than it was last year, so you could be in a lot worse situations. And I do think that eventually Andrew Luck is going to play this year.
When? Tell me when, South.
I am pegging it at about week 9 when he gets back on.
I wanted you to say week 4. You didn't say that, though.
No, I would peg it at about week 9, but that's just a wild guess. I've been tracking it closely just out of just random interest, and it feels like a week 9 situation. So, all right, let's take a quick time out here, take a pause for the cause, so to speak, and talk about our friends at Gorb. Our friends at Gorb tell us that in life, you really only have 2 choices. You could either get hungry or you could be hungry. And, I've kind of adopted that philosophy lately. And it's not just because, we get some sweet gear from Gorb, as you could see. Rocco's sporting it in his Seahawks-esque colors. Deal's got his on tonight. Honestly, it's all about finding out what you're passionate about and just going after it. Instead of being hungry and always, wondering what would have happened if I would have went after it. It's all about get hungry, go after it, pursue it, and chase it. And the beautiful thing about it is that with all this awesome wear that we've been able to sport and that you could check out at GHORBH.com, they've got something for everybody. And you could be reminded of it every day, whether it's an awesome design t-shirt or guys, gals, they've got something for everybody. It all looks great. It all feels great when you wear it. We definitely endorse it. We do not endorse garbage on this show. We're all in on it. We think you should check it out too. That's GHORBH.com. Check it out today. Get hungry or be hungry. All right, let's talk about our goons and ghosts for this week. For those of you that may not know the situation here, our goons are the guys that we feel like are a little bit undervalued this week, who are going to overperform versus where they're pre-ranked for this week. Our ghosts are guys who are rated a little bit higher, who we think are going to underperform where they're expected this week. So let's start out with our goons this week. Rocco, you're up first.
All right. So we kind of already talked about this situation, but my goon for this week is Oakland's number one wide receiver, Michael Crabtree. And I say number one, and, that's kind of a joke between us, but also Crabtree versus Cooper, since they've both been in Oakland, is kind of really close to just being 1A and 1B. Everybody knows how much I love 1A, 1B situations. But Crabtree's got more touchdowns, 20-12, more receptions, 186 to 164, and just slightly less yards, 2088 to 2318. So, yes, Cooper's getting more yards, but when they get down to the red zone, Crabtree's the guy they look for. This week, they're playing the Redskins' porous 28th ranked pass defense, and they have not shown any signs of slowing up with that offense after 2 weeks. So I look for, a normal stat line from Cooper, 7 catches, 80 yards, but he's the one that's going to get in the end zone. So Crabtree's my play this week.
All right. I'm going to give you my goon this week. It is Carlos Hyde of the San Francisco 49ers. He is running back number 12 right now. And here's why I like him so much this week. He faces the 29th ranked rush defense of the Rams, which when you think about the games that they played this year, they haven't looked like they've been that bad, but they're giving up a decent amount of yardage to the running back position. And they're going to play on a short week. I know it's not that much of a crazy travel here, but on these short weeks, the running backs tend to kind of take over the game. So they've given up 152 yards per game, 4.8 yards per carry this season, and already 3 touchdowns surrendered to the running back position. Hyde hasn't found the end zone yet, but he's getting 6 targets per game receiving in addition to help. So they're making him a big part of the passing game as well. So here's a guy who all of a sudden you've now added that extra element, added ways for him to get into the end zone, and he's getting closer and closer as they really kind of wrap that offense around him. He ripped off big chunks against Seattle last week, and the Rams have given up quite a few big chunks themselves. So he's definitely a candidate for a home run type run this week. I like him to have 21 carries, 133 yards, and a touchdown, 6 catches, 41 yards, and another touchdown. I think everything goes through Carlos Hyde this week. They've matched up well against the Rams the past couple years. Carlos Hyde is my goon this week.
That's goontastic.
That is very goontastic. Miles, you are up.
I'm going with Jarvis Landry this week, wide receiver from the Dolphins. He's playing at the New York Jets. Landry's coming off of a 15-target game. So apparently the switch to Jay Cutler didn't matter. Guess what? Jarvis Landry's open all the time. So 15 targets. He went 13 catches for 78 yards. This guy's last 2 games in New York against the Jets have totaled 16 catches for 268 yards and 2 touchdowns. He downright shreds these guys. All right, the Jets themselves have given up 5 passing touchdowns already in 2 weeks, so they are on pace to give up 40 touchdown passes. Nice job.
Oof.
All right, and that 5 that they've given up includes 3 just last week against a similar possession type receiver in Michael Crabtree. Now, Landry is not the red zone target that Crabtree is, but a similar type receiver. I expect Jarvis Landry to deliver an 11-catch, 110-yard, 1-touchdown line, which maybe isn't going to end up above wide receiver 5 line, but he is pre-ranked as wide receiver 27. So take that 11, 110, and 1 to the bank.
All right, Deal. Who is your goon this week?
My goon this week's Martavis Bryant. He looked absolutely awesome on Sunday. I know that X did give it to AB, just like Rocco said he was going to, but Martavis looked basically uncoverable. He was down on a snap count. He only played 63.5% of the snaps. So, but as he adjusts back into the game, his snap count and chemistry with Ben are going to continue to grow. I think that Chicago is a pretty bad team. So I don't think that the Steelers will struggle to beat them, but the Steelers offense hasn't looked great this far. So I really think that the Steelers are kind of use this game. Hopefully they're ready, because Mike Tomlin's generally not ready for bad teams, but hopefully they're ready, and they're going to use this as more like practice scrimmage mode for their offense to get up to standard. And I like Martavis Bryant to eat this week. I like him for 9 receptions, 96 yards, and a touchdown.
All right, those are the goons this week. Let's talk about our ghosts for this week, or guys who we believe are going to underperform their ranks. I'm going to go first, and I'm going to give you a guy who, honestly, this is more about ranking than anything else. I'm not going to try and tell you that, Drew Brees is awful, but he's the quarterback number 4 this week. He's going up against a Panthers defense that's giving up 273 pass yards per game and no touchdowns so far. Some of that is competition to this point, but also you can't understate the fact that they're a confident group right now as a defense. They're playing well. They're a little bit youngery, if I dare say. So their defensive front is really good. Brees is definitely going to challenge that number, but that really, it's not saying too much, because he's had his own struggles to this point. And again, some of that is the competition that he's played. 3 touchdowns through 2 games, but the offense has struggled to really find its rhythm. I don't think that we give enough credit to what Brandon Cooks might have meant to that offense at this point. And I'm going to go ahead and throw in another bit of Willie Snead love. They're definitely missing him in the middle of that offense. There's no doubt about it. So they've really struggled to find their rhythm to this point. The offensive line is going to have a hard time keeping Brees standing upright the whole game. He seems to be a guy that gets rid of it quick, but it's going to be a struggle all game long. The bottom line here, he is definitely overvalued at number 4 this week. I've got him at 285 yards through the air and a single touchdown for my ghost of the week. Miles, who's your ghost?
Yeah, I'm actually I'm going with the quarterback train as well. I'm going to take Jameis Winston for the Bucs. They're playing at Minnesota this week. Jameis is pre-ranked QB 12 headed to this week's matchup here with the Vikings. That's not overly high of a ranking, but from what I'm seeing, he's coming off of a very unspectacular 204-yard, 1-touchdown line against the Bears. He didn't register a rushing attempt, which I know isn't a huge part of his game, but what is he gets about 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns a year. So you got to watch that. But, part of that's the game script. It didn't call for him to throw it a ton. The Bucs actually ran the ball more times than they threw it, which is definitely not a 2017 NFL type of line. But I'd still expect more from him in a game where they were in control against Chicago. So now he heads out to Minnesota, where they're only allowing 258 yards passing per game, which includes their only passing touchdown was to Drew Brees with 1:56 remaining in that game. Like, it didn't matter at all. So you're talking about 258 is not a low number, but please keep in mind they've played Drew Brees and Ben Roethlisberger. So that's getting the job done. So, I think Winston's going to play all right. And honestly, this should be a great game. It's one of my favorite games in the slate. Not so much for fantasy purposes, though. I think it's going to be kind of low scoring. I'm looking for Winston only around 220 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 picks as he tries. When Jameis tries to press too much, he throws the ball to the other team. That's the only downside to his game. So 220, 1 and 2. failing to deliver a QB1 tier expectation for that guy this week.
All right, Deal, who's your ghost this week?
So I talked about Martavis, not really, or he's been getting the chemistry done with Ben, but for me, Cooks has not gotten that chemistry yet with Brady, and Cooks is my ghost for the week. He's projected at wide receiver number 7 right now, and I do think that their chemistry will form at some point. I just don't think it's this week. And I know Houston hasn't played any powerhouse offenses, but the best receiver and the best stats they've had so far against them is last game, this past week. AJ Green had 5 receptions for 67 yards. If Gronk doesn't play this week, which it looks like he's probably not going to, that will benefit Cooks. But I still don't see any way that he's a wide receiver number 1 this week. He's certainly not a wide receiver number 7. And I think he still struggles for at least one more week. I look for around 4 receptions for 58 yards, no scores again, and he's my ghost of the week.
All right, Rocco, who is your ghost?
Sometimes teams just have bad situations. And right now, I do not want to be the Houston Texans having to go to New England and play them in New England after week 1. I think that Matt Patricia and Bill Belichick are going to make a nightmare scenario for Deshaun Watson and that offense. And the guy that's going to be hurt the most is this week's wide receiver 10, DeAndre Hopkins. I think they're going to go after that young quarterback, really make him scramble, run for his life, show him some fronts that he might not be used to seeing in the NFL, show him some things, and that's all going to affect, what he's able to do with DeAndre Hopkins. So far, Hopkins has got 7 catches in both weeks. He's got a low of 55 yards, but that's the game that he had the touchdown in too. I don't think he gets anywhere near those 7 catches this week. I like a 3 for 45 stat line, no scores, and that's not wide receiver 10 territory.
All right, hey, let's jump into our daily fantasy football values of the week. Daily fantasy is a huge, huge part of the fantasy football industry now. And what we try to do every week here is give you a player who is a little bit on the cheaper side, who is going to give you much better than anticipated return for what you spend and help you to save up some of your salary and use it in another area. So we're going to try and find values who might be a little deeper down, who are going to give you top level or close production here. So let's start out. Miles, who is your daily fantasy play of the week?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just pile on the Jets. How's that sound?
Works for me.
It works for a lot of fantasy teams too. So for me, my daily play of the week is actually Jay Cutler. How about that?
Ooh.
I'm going with a Jay Cutler that seems to care, which is always a good player. It's just very rare. So he's $7,400 here on FanDuel, which is, our site of preference. I'm generally a fan of sticking with the home team in daily. I like to ride that home team train, but even though they're on the road in New York, I'm going to stick with the Fins. I love the matchup. I don't want to be the guy that does just pick on the Jets. I know it seems like that, or really any other bad team, but Cutler's coming off a game, very pedestrian, 230 and a touchdown. But that's after getting, they've been in some circumstances here. You got a game canceled because of a hurricane. Then you got to fly across the country and go against a very, very tough Chargers defense. And he looked pretty good. And what I really like about him as well is the running game with Jay Ajayi. That's going to keep defenses honest all year. And Cutler's going to benefit exponentially as he gains rapport with, Devontae Parker and Jarvis Landry, the rest of his receivers. He's worked with these guys for a couple months. So, don't skim past this guy's name just because you roll your eyes every time you see Jay Cutler. That is a cheap quarterback against a bad team with really good weapons around him. So if you're the type that likes to look for value at the quarterback position, go with Jay. Smoking Jay.
I got to say, watch Jay Cutler this week. It looked like he cared an awful lot. And I read the best comment that I saw on Twitter, and I don't know who to give credit to, but somebody said, this is not going to be a very fun football season if Jay Cutler actually cares. It's more fun to watch and laugh at him. But anyway, let's move on here. Deal, who is your daily fantasy play of the week?
My daily fantasy play is a guy we mentioned a little bit earlier, Chris Thompson. He is costing only $5,600 this week, which is criminal. Listen, the Redskins' offense is kind of a mess right now, but shockingly, their running game is part that is succeeding. They're number 3 in the league right now as far as rushing yards per game. And this week, Chris Thompson is on FanDuel ranked wide receiver 27. He's the 27th most expensive running back. Right now, Chris Thompson is the number 5 running back in the league as far as FanDuel scoring goes. Number 5. Now, Fat Rob is most likely out for this week, and Chris Thompson's going to get a lot more looks. Matt Forte just had 53 rushing yards, 4 receptions for 38 yards against Oakland. First 2 games of the season are 13.6 points, 24.1 points, and he's the 27th ranked running back on FanDuel. He's playing really well. I love Chris Thompson for only $5,600 this week.
All right, Rocco, who's your daily value this week?
All right, so I've been talking about this guy all off season, and nobody wants to listen to me. Davante Adams of the Green Bay Packers.
Shut up.
Oh my god!
had to throw.
You're not allowed to jump on the Davante thing.
I thought you were going to say Ladarius Green for a second there.
No, Davante Adams is my play of the week this week, though, because for $6,800, he's costing you about $3,000 less than your top targets. Jordy's question isn't health, and when Jordy's out of the game, Davante Adams is the guy that kind of replaces that Jordy role. I think we expected more from him in week 1 than we saw, but that's just because when Jordy's on the field, Jordy's still Aaron Rodgers' guy, and that's what we learned. But with Jordy out of the lineup, Davante Adams is the guy that steps into that Jordy Nelson role for Rodgers and the guy that he trusts the most. He had a fantastic week last week, unfortunately, in a losing effort to the Falcons. But like I said, for $3,000 less than your top wide receivers and Jordy out, it really bumps Adams into that top 10 category of wide receivers, and yet you're not paying for that. So Adams, for me, is the steal for daily this week.
All right, my daily value this week is Devin Funchess. Talked about him a little bit earlier. Here's the reason. I'm taking a deep dive this week. I like a couple of guys that are near the more to kind of cash in this week. I think that Antonio Brown is kind of a shoe-in against the Bears this week. So I want to be able to afford him, but also save up some money elsewhere. Devin Funchess is 4,800 greenbacks this week. That's it. Only 4,800. The Saints are terrible on defense. They've already given up 6 receiving touchdowns, 777 passing yards in 2 weeks. Olsen is down. Funchess kind of picked up some of his targets in the second half last week. He's a big body. He's a threat in the middle of the field. I know Kelvin Benjamin is also a big body, and he's a natural red zone guy. But even with him playing previously, Olsen got plenty of looks in the middle of that offense in the red zone. So he's insanely low cost, and I think that he's got a very high probability to steal a touchdown this week for you in fantasy. So I'm all in on Devin Funchess. He scored in 2 of his last 3 versus the Saints. He's had 20 targets in those last 3 games versus the Saints as well. I think he's going to cash in with a touchdown, make that $4,800 very profitable for you. Go blue. Devin Funchess is my guy this week.
I was waiting for you to mention the fact that he went to Michigan. I couldn't.
Yeah, you could have saved your whole explanation. Just said, I want Funchess with Chris Perry. They went to Michigan.
Hey,
and Mike Hart.
Relax. Hey, let's touch real quickly here on a couple questions that came rolling in here that I don't want to just dismiss. We got a couple minutes here. One of the questions from J. Lau wants to know, how do you handle if you own AJ Green at this point?
I'm not nervous about AJ Green at all. I was going to talk about this, on the agenda. You had what's a player you're trying to buy low on. AJ Green was my guy. I mean, they look abysmal on offense so far, and AJ Green's a guy, like, to call him soft-spoken would be kind of an understatement or an overstatement. I don't know how you say that. All right, but my point is the offenses look so bad that the fact that he had to come out in the media and be like, hey, you remember how good I am? Can you throw me the ball one time? It actually cost Ken Zampese his job as the offensive coordinator. So if Bill Lazor, the new offensive coordinator, and the aforementioned superstar head coach Marvin Lewis want to keep their jobs, they're going to feed this dude like crazy. He's going to become that Mike Evans type target monster. You have to rely on Andy Dalton to be like competent, which at this point hasn't looked promising either. But I think AJ Green's going to be a target monster. You're looking at that 15 to 16 targets a week. I'm buying very, very low on AJ Green. I want him on my fantasy teams.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they're going to try and design some more creative ways to get him the ball, no matter what it costs, because you've got to get your best players the ball. That's ultimately what it comes down to. These are a couple guys who, there's turnover there. So you've got to get back to the basics. Who's our best player? How do we get him the ball? So I agree. I think the targets are going to go up. He's a guy that's going to produce for you. Hold tight on him, at least in my perspective.
For me, I don't know what the record is, the NFL record for targets weeks 2 through 16, but AJ Green should break that record because the Bengals should look at their team and their situation and say, we are horrible and AJ Green is really good. So we should try something different, like trying to get our best player by a lot the ball. So what worse could happen? Andy Dalton could throw the ball out of bounds or to the other team or 40 yards away from his own team. That's already happening. So why not at least target AJ Green?
All right. Well, listen, that's going to do it for the week 3 preview edition of the podcast. We've got a ton going on right now, including a massive LeVeon Bell autographed jersey giveaway. All you have to do to enter that is head over to footballgoons.com, sign up for our email list, and you're entered. 1 entry per email address. If you have 10 email addresses, 15 email addresses, enter them all. That's how many entries you're going to get. October 1st, we're going to go ahead and pick a winner and announce it and share that information out with you guys. But somebody is going to win absolutely free, no strings attached. There's no spam. We're not selling your email to bots. You're not going to get junk email. 1 weekly update with podcast, Miles's power rankings every single week, and whatever else is going on in the Football Goons world. You can check us out and keep up with us on social media as well. Facebook.com/footballgoons, @footballgoons on the Twitter, and right here on our YouTube channel as well, where we definitely encourage you to subscribe and get the notifications whenever we're going live. We're going live every Sunday at noon to give you lineup updates as well and answer your lineup questions. So you be sure to check in with us at that time. We always try to hit you guys back on social media. We know you guys are loyal listeners. You could send us your lineup questions, your comments, your concerns, whatever else you want to talk about with us. We are definitely up for some conversation. We'll catch you guys next time.